Today we're talking about the basis of functions again. So this is our second day in this section. And today we're going to introduce a new concept which is called function notation. And we use this when we're stating the domain and the range. So just some basic information that is useful to us is that domain is our x values. And when we're recording our domain, we always go left to right. And this is something we covered last year. Our range is always our y values. And when we're stating the range, we always go bottom to top. So last year when we did domain and range, we always wrote it with an inequality. So this year we're going to phase out the inequalities and use function notation. So just some general knowledge here. If a value is included, we use a bracket. So brackets indicate included values. Whereas regular parentheses would indicate not included values. So for instance, that would be used like if we have an open dot. We're going to be dealing with infinities and negative infinities. And we never use brackets on infinity because infinity, it implies it goes forever, and a bracket means there's one specific value that it would stop at, so they contradict one another. So I would say always use parentheses for the infinity and the negative infinity. So we're just going to try a few examples, just getting the hang of writing the domain and range using our function notation. So here is our first picture. Again, I recommend you taking a moment and pausing the video so that you can draw this picture. And to kind of recall from last year, domain always went left to right. So I work from the farthest left and then I work my way to the right. And I want to determine what kind of x values are hit in the picture. So notice, if I'm going left to right, the x values that are hit are from -2 to 1. So last year we would have said -2 is less than or equal to x less than or equal to 1. So that's more algebra 2. In pre-calc we use the function notation, so your final answer would say -2 to 1. And they both would have brackets because both of these dots are closed. So range, we have to kind of switch gears and we think bottom to top. So range we have to kind of envision the other way. So the range goes from bottom to top. And the y values that are hit, so now we're looking at our y-axis, are anywhere from 0 to 3. So again, last year we would have wrote this way. For pre-calc, we need to phase that out and start introducing interval notation. So for our range, we would say from 0 to 3, both with brackets again, because both of these dots are closed. So then the next question says f of 1, and they want to know the output. So this again means x. So when x is 1, this is where x is 1, I would travel up until I find the dot, and the matching y value that it has is 3. For the second question, they're asking for the reverse. So they're giving you the y value of 0. So y is 0 right here. And I want to know that it's corresponding x value. So when y is 0, I will travel over. And the x value that it has is a -2. So I would say x equals -2. So that's it for that one. Let's try another one. Again, take a moment and pause the picture if you need to. So again, domain goes from left to right. So last year we would have said -2 is less than x less than or equal to +2. So notice last year we would have used the inequalities and we would have said just less than because this dot right here is an open dot. This one's closed, so that's why that has the equal to. So to kind of interpret this into function notation, I would use a parenthesis, -2 to 2, with a bracket on it. And now we switch gears and we think range, bottom to top. So here's my bottom to my top. So the y values that are hit are from -1 to +1. And again, notice this value, when it's lined up with -1, it's an open dot, which is why I just used the less than symbol. So my range is from -1 to 1 with a bracket on it. And now we have a few more questions to answer. So here they're giving you x value of -2. So when x is -2, notice I would go down and notice it's an open circle, so the y value is undefined. So the open dot just kind of stands as a placeholder. It's not actually a defined value. So when x is 2, I go over to 2, and the matching y value is 1. And here we work backwards. I'm giving you y, so when y is 0, it just so happens that x is also 0. So let's try another one. Okay, so again, domain is left to right, so here's my furthest left value all the way to my right value. So we would say -2 is less than or equal to x less than 1. So to interpret this into my domain, I would say bracket -2 to 1 with a parenthesis. So going from furthest left to furthest right. Range is bottom to top. So this is the bottom value, this is the top value. So I would say it's going from -3 all the way up until, we could say 1.2. Okay, now, common question is, this dot is open, so why am I not using just a less than? Why do I have a less than or equal to? Well, the reason is this dot right here is a y value, and notice it has the same y value of -1. So even though it's not defined there, it's defined over here. So if I sandwich this together, -1 is defined somewhere, and that's all that matters. So to put my range, I would say from -3 to 1.2. Okay. When x is 1, my y value is undefined. When y is -3, so 1, 2, 3, the matching x value is -2. And I think we have one more picture. So here's our last picture for today. So domain again is left to right. Now, notice this one is unique because this is the furthest left point, but when I go to put my ending point for the furthest right, it's not going to end because there's an arrow, so it's going to keep going forever. So my domain, I would say, is everything greater than -3. So this is again how we would write it last year. So to interpret this into function notation, I'm starting at -3, but -3 is not included, and I'm going forever to positive infinity. So these x values are only going to continue to grow, so that's why it's going towards positive infinity. My range, so my lowest y value is 0, right here, that has a y value of 0, and again, these y values are going to continue to grow up and up and up, so it's going to keep going up to infinity. There is no distinct ending y value. So my range is 0 with a parenthesis on it, also to infinity, because these y values are getting higher. And the last question they say is when f of 0, so when x is 0, I go up, and I would say my matching y value is 1.5. So we're going to do some more practice on interpreting graphs tomorrow with domain and range.